All right,
It's not
we
fine at
are
all.
rolling.
It's not fine at all. I don't like it.
This is the mismatch anyway. So. Okay.
Are you comfortable?
I am. I'm a little bit
Are
chilled.
you,
That's
are
why.
you a little bit chilly?
Yes, I'm Asian.
I'm not saying you're not.
Thank you. Great. So we have Robin Doenicke today, the founder and chief evangelist of Zensho. Where is that?
Zensho agency, yeah. Zensho agency KK. So for convenience purposes, we'll call it Zach.
Sounds
every now
good.
and then.
Sounds good.
So yeah, I mean, podcast number 3.
Yeah. So before we get into it, Robin, why don't you just give yourself a bit of an introduction, tell everyone who you are,
Yeah.
what you're doing.
Well, firstly, thanks very much for having me on this podcast. Your first guest, I believe.
Yep.
So I'm really honored to be part of this. So I'm the president and chief evangelist of Zensho Agency, ZAC, as we refer to it internally. And we are a recruitment firm here in Tokyo. We've been in operation since 2003. However, in 2016, we totally transformed the way that we are doing the business.
Yeah.
And we created a brand new paradigm, a blue ocean paradigm that's really turned the way recruitment firms engage with their recruiters upside down. We wanted to come up with a brand new way of approaching that whole relationship. And that was mostly kind of inspired by hearing a great deal of dissatisfaction amongst senior recruiters in the market. I mean, people were just getting really jaded and really dissatisfied with the way their situation was at most of the traditional recruitment firms out there. And a large part of that came down to this real pressure or this kind of trend where recruitment firms were being very KPI driven. And look, KPIs aren't evil, they're not bad, but when they seem to take over from allowing people to do what they know how to do when it comes to being a good recruiter, and forcing them to make sure they're spending so much of their time on all this other periphery, all this other admin and KPI related matters. It was turning the art away from, it was turning the profession of recruitment away from being an art and just becoming pure science.
Right.
And so I really wanted to, I spent a lot of time talking with people in the market about what they weren't happy about, where they feel, the reasons they got into recruitment in the first place. And we found that there really wasn't any other option for senior recruiters in the market to get outside of that system unless they started their own firms.
Yeah.
And I'll be the first to say that doing that is not necessarily a way to make more money. And now doing such things, you have to now run a business, run a company, which is in a very competitive market, and also still be a recruiter. And so that's why we wanted to create a genuine third option, a new option that didn't yet exist. And I can talk more about that later if you're interested. But it really, I guess put simply, the whole reason for our being as a firm is to liberate recruiters in this market and potentially other markets going forward. But it's really to provide a platform through which our recruiters, our consultants, can achieve the things that are important to them in their lives. And that's our whole reason for being, our whole mission statement, which we're very proud of, and we make it clear to every client, candidate, and colleague that we engage with.
It was interesting because I was perusing, going and scrolling on LinkedIn, and a former colleague of mine had posted an article about now, especially in 2019, the whole gig economy is what's fueling growth in the U.S. I mean, I think it was over 34 million individuals in the U.S. alone are on this gig economy. They're not just working one job. They're not just working, one role. They're working multiple roles.
Right.
They're not tied down to this whole KPI-driven system.
Well, I'm so interested in that because that's actually been an area I've been exploring, just reading about as a hobby really for the last couple of years.
Right.
This future direction of work.
Right.
And, going back to the Industrial Revolution, we have everything, all the power, all the work being centralized, right?
Yeah.
In the factory or the office, and it was talent going out in search of work. Now we see that unraveling or turning around. It's now work going out in search of talent. Look at the Airbnbs and the Ubers and all of that. And recruitment is an industry that's so ripe, so ready for that gig economy. It's about, as corny as it sounds, it's giving the power back to the people. It's
Right.
empowering and liberating individuals. And the jobs that I've got a 9-year-old and a 3-year-old, the jobs that they'll be doing don't even exist yet.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's true.
that's how rapidly things are changing.
Oh.
And
10 years ago, 20 years ago, there wasn't any jobs in demand for
No.
AI,
right.
for
No, it
all this
wasn't,
tech
right.
and CRM.
Exactly.
It's
It's
like,
completely unknown
Yeah.
territory. I got to play devil's advocate a little bit here
Yeah.
because one of the, the opponents of this gig economy says like, look, it's eating away at the foundations of society, like a steady income, a piece of paper where you can go to a bank and say, look, I am guaranteed to make X amount of money in the next year. I have permanent employment. All these things are disappearing. And in a way, that is also the feedback that we often get when we engage with people for Zach.
Mhm.
That like, look, what, like how does it benefit me to be part of the gig economy?
Right.
Like what are the pros and cons of this? Gig life, so to speak.
Well, I think fortunately, it seems like the rest of our infrastructure in society is also taking note and catching up. I mean, I think the old corporations, the old school model of trying to keep you as an employee and pay you a salary, and if you're a good boy, you get a little bit of a raise and maybe a nicer title. I think that's worked, and that had its place, and that worked for 50 years or 60 years or whatever. But I think companies are largely, especially the millennials today, they're searching for greater purpose, greater meaning in their life. They're no longer willing, I think, to just surrender their lives and their interests to the corporation for 40 years with the assumption that corporation will take care of me, because as we see happening, that doesn't always take place. Even a country like Japan, which was known for its lifetime employment, they're even letting go of people. So I think people are waking up to the realization that they need to take responsibility for themselves. And even if you're an employee in a company, it's still a contract. I'm saying I'm giving my time to you, my expertise, my knowledge, my skills,
Right.
in exchange for your money.
Money.
Right? That's
Yeah.
basically what whether you're an employee or not. But I think everyone needs to approach their own career, their own future kind of path as an independent business owner, whether you're an employee or not.
Right.
But I think this gig economy is largely coming out of demand. It's not something that's just being forced on us.
Right.
It's happening because of this push that's coming from people. Otherwise, it wouldn't be there.
No.
And you're to your peril if you try to snuff that out or try to block that. And I think the old dinosaur companies that aren't able to adapt and evolve won't survive in Darwinian kind of terms.
It's interesting because I have a lot of friends who are designers and freelance photographers and etc. in Japan, and they're freelance and they work from gig to gig, and they make actually a pretty good living, because one, there's not that many freelance designers and expert photographers etc. in this market, so they do really cool projects for like Nike, for Adidas, for films in the U.S. But the majority of them are from the West.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of them are from Japan. And I asked this because is also Japan ready for the gig economy? Because a couple of months ago I had a friend of ours, my wife's friend, and she was currently at a contract role. Very good company, Fortune 100 company, very probably actually top 10 company in the world. But she was there at a contract role, 12-month rolling contract, not a permanent basis. But for her, that was like shame, and she wouldn't go home, and she wouldn't even tell her parents that I'm on a contract for 12 months, because it means you're unstable. It means you're not going to get a good family, a good husband, etc. Because she's on this 12-month rolling contract. And I was telling her, I was like, but yes, but you still have a job, and that contract is renewed dependent on your performance, and if you perform well, of course it's going to be renewed. There's no reason to let you go.
And let's be honest, if you don't perform on a permanent contract, they'll find a way to get you out.
Right.
Anyway.
But to me that goes back to the question of the mindset in Japan, that are they ready for this whole gig economy? Because not a lot of maybe the few individual Japanese people who have been exposed to the West are, because they realize, okay, I can have freedom, but then do a lot of people want that here? I
think look, yeah. Compared to the West, Japan is definitely behind the curve in that sense. But it's happening, and like most change in Japan, it's usually slow, but it usually requires some sense of they don't. In general, I'd say, especially corporations, they don't like to change unless it's kind of required, it's forced,
right.
Based on whatever might have happened, the circumstances of the market might be. And I think Japanese companies are also coming to that realization that we need to adapt, we need to change. I mean, look at the immigration policies now allowing more and more foreign talent coming into the country and so on. These are things that would have met with so much resistance and probably still do with many facets of society. But I think it's changing. It has to change. We see it happening in other countries in Asia. I think Japan knows, particularly with its aging society, that it has to adapt. Again, it's going to come from within. It's going to come from within the people. People aren't, people want to graduate a good Japanese university and go to Mitsubishi or Marubeni or Sumitomo, and that's still largely the case. But even that's changing. Those companies now are losing talent to startups. To people want to create something new. They don't want to just be part of this corporation now for 40 years.
Yeah.
So it is changing. I think it's going to reluctantly. People are going to have to ride along with that wave or be left behind.
Right.
And we see it happening all the time. That, usually the Japanese expression, the hammered nail, the nail that sticks out will be hammered down. And we have that everywhere, really, in every country. But in Japan, it's a very common thing. And often when people try to be a bit of an upstart and try to introduce something new, it gets hammered down. It's back to what's comfortable again. But we see too many nails sticking out now, and I think it's going to. You can't just keep hammering.
You can't keep hammering it out.
Right.
I like what Stephen Fry wrote a while ago. He says don't be a noun, be a verb. Don't be an actor, don't be a writer, don't be a recruiter, don't be a marketer. Perform your roles. Mm-hmm. Yes, you market. Yes, you act. Yes, you write. Yes, you recruit. But there's a whole palette of you, and if you confine yourself in that space, it's a recipe for unhappiness, because once you have this pen built around you, you basically lose all freedom to develop further.
Right, exactly, and it's interesting because you see a lot of actors now. The more successful ones, actually, I would say, are the ones that have branched outside of acting. The most successful actors. So you have. What's his name?
Oh, you mean like actual actors right now?
Actual actors.
So Ashton Kutcher, he's like a VC private equity guy.
He invested in Uber, and he's invested in so many startups now. And then you also have Hugh Jackman with opening Laughing Coffee, and
our friend Conor McGregor
with whiskey. But then you have these guys who are more successful in the long term because they have the freedom to create. To create things, to do what they want.
Here's the important thing too. Something I think where Zach really occupies a unique space is, you talk about your friends who are freelance photographers and whatnot. They're true freelance in that they're on their own and they're trying to get clients to do work for them. As opposed to I'm a photographer working for the Japan Times, which is a full-time employee position. Zach kind of operates this unique third space, almost like middle ground, where we are a company, we are an office, we have an incredible culture, an incredibly tight-knit team, where the independent contractor status of our people is largely a technicality in the sense of the legal relationship between us. But in terms of our culture, in terms of our camaraderie and the kind of people, the way we work with each other, we engage, we communicate, that is tighter than any great team at any company.
And all these forced teamwork.
And it's organic. It comes naturally from people. And what's wonderful, it removes me as being a boss. I become a coach or a mentor and a colleague. And just the level of our relationship changes. And it's fantastic. So we have the best of the environment that provides the infrastructure and the support and the comfort, etc., the name and the recognition and brand. But we also offer the freedom for you to be able to be empowered and take control of your own life. Right. And again, an important thing too, it has to be, has to go hand in hand with freedom, is reward. It's easy to say, hey, you're free, you're an independent contractor. And then if the company doesn't reward you for the work you do, then where's the freedom in that? There's no freedom in poverty, But if you can also have a system that offers the freedom and great reward, then you really are able to empower people.
So before we go on a little bit more, just ask where you want to take Stack and where also your beginnings of your own personal story. You mentioned independent contractor. Not everybody's going to understand that. Could you just help to define? Well, one, what is an independent contractor, and two, how did you make it fit into the system that Zach has right now?
Yes, so maybe starting with the latter part there, about 3 years ago, as I mentioned, I was hearing a lot of dissatisfaction, discontent in the market.
Right.
For the life of me, I can't remember how I got onto this, but I started doing a lot of research into the New York real estate brokerage industry, and found that, after a fairly exhaustive investigation, found that some of the top brokerages were attracting the best agents, the best real estate agents, who, that's an industry where all the agents are independent contractors, rarely are they employees. And by that, meaning they weren't getting a base salary, they weren't getting a fixed salary every month. They didn't necessarily have a fixed desk to work at. They also, what came with that, they didn't have fixed hours they had to be there, etc. And also the agents were usually paying a nominal fee to the brokerage in exchange for all the marketing and branding, paraphernalia and the database and all the infrastructure and the phones and all of that, and the branding and the contract work and signing up with the clients, etc. And I thought, wow, could this work in recruitment and could this work in Japan? And every single person told me no, it's not going to work. It's not a market, like you said earlier. It's not a market. Is a market ready for that? And I think it was just out of more curiosity to see if it could work, but also a belief that it had to work. It was necessary for the market. I started to explore it, and I went through like a mad scientist at home, writing compensation plans and throwing them away and tweaking this and that. And then I finally had something which I thought was workable, and I shared it with a couple of people, and they got it straight away, and they thought, this is what we have to do. And so I transitioned. The company had been in operation since 2003, so I transitioned the few staff that we had to this new system, with their full willingness, and then we launched this new paradigm, the agency, and which was it was a new brand name for the new business model that we were promoting. And within what, two years, we've got maybe 15, 16 of the market's top recruiters. And something you will not find pretty much anywhere else is we have 16 people who are proven performers, and they all get on well. We help each other, and it's you spend more time with your colleagues than you do with your own family.
Exactly.
So it's really important that you get the right people.
One of the things I like in that we established here, which is kind of like becoming a hallmark, is our ZAP policy, right? Zero asshole policy.
Zero asshole policy. It's a critical piece of the whole how this all fits together.
And we zapped quite a lot of people, actually.
Many, I like that. Yeah. I'll have to start using that. Yeah, we zapped. We had several people come to us, big billers, making more than 50 million yen revenue, 60 million yen revenue, and I wouldn't say they were necessarily assholes, but one or two of them were, but some of them just weren't. They just didn't have the right character, I felt, to fit in with our culture, to be someone who is willing to share information and say, hey, here's a lead, here's a candidate, here's something that's nothing to do with my area, and I expect nothing in return.
Right.
None of this wheeling and dealing. I'll give you 10%. Give me 10% if I give you this and give you that. That is not tolerated here. We willingly help each other, and we're all happy to do it. And it's amazing. And what I love seeing is people within their own practice groups coming up with their own KPIs. It's not me saying, "Hey, you've got to do this." It's you saying, "Let's try an achieve list."
And those KPIs are actually founded on what works for them individually.
Right.
They know if I do this much activity, that comes out.
Exactly.
It's not something that's
organic. It's authentic.
Yeah, it's a top-down measurement system to run a business.
Let's focus a little bit on the KPI stuff, because I went through a corporate. I grew, even though I grew up in a recruitment firm, in a recruitment family. My mother had her own firm.
You had a corporate phase.
Yeah, well, I had the corporate phase, a corporate period in my life. But when my mother was running her firm, she didn't have as many of these KPIs that I'm hearing now in the market. And so, how did the industry in Japan, or I don't know if it's just in Japan or in the world, how did it become so KPI driven? Was it like that when you started in recruitment? And
not really. No, I definitely become more. And I think the more that the big global shops have come in, they try to systemize everything. Everything's about systemization, automation, and keeping investors happy, keeping keeping the making sure that the PR and the media machine is working well. And it's very much a process of what we try to do with a recruiter. We try to really promote each of our people. And you are a brand. You are a brand. You are your name. You're worth something, right?
Right.
And you're not just a cog in the wheel, a cog in the machine. And I think a lot of these other places are moving things to a point where it doesn't matter about you.
Yeah.
You don't matter. We tell our clients, don't engage with Lawrence or Raffy, engage with, or Robin, engage with the machine. So if one of us leaves, it doesn't matter, we'll just slot the next person in. I get that from a business perspective, but I just don't think it's right. I think, you are the company, you are the machine.
Right.
And it's a massive disservice to the core of recruitment, which is so relationship driven.
So I think it's about, you've really got to look at, who it is that's really helping your business move, and it's your people.
Right.
If you're not looking after them and recognizing them, respecting them, rewarding them, then it just becomes a machine. It just becomes about, well, how much money can I make,
And
bill, etc. It just becomes about the bottom line.
Because I would get from other recruitment firms, send outs of candidates or, hey, is this person great? And they wouldn't even when we were fielding out positions and when they were giving us profiles back, I was like, this is a waste of my time. And we had a conversation about this before. Like,
why do they do that?
Yeah, why do they do this? Like, it's a waste of my time. The one thing I need you as a recruiter to do and to help me, and that's why we're hiring you to help us find talent, is to not waste my time.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
So I don't want to see the 10 candidates you met, I want to see the 3 best of those, right?
Yeah. We often
Or
tell
just
our
one
clients.
even.
Just one, yeah.
We'll often tell our clients, look, you're not going to necessarily receive the most resumes from us, but we're confident that when your inbox goes ping, you see it's a resume or an email from someone at Zach, you're going to open it because you know we don't waste your time.
Right.
You know that we've listened to you, we've actually interviewed you to understand the real job that needs doing, and then we've gone out there and we've evaluated, keyword being evaluated, potential candidates that can do the job you need them to do. Not just because they have the right buzzwords on their resume that match the words on the job description, but actually people who can do the job because we've identified aspects of their past performance of them having done the job successfully.
Yeah.
And if they've done it before, they can likely do it again. So when we send you that resume, that candidate, and our evaluation, we've saved you a whole lot of time of you trying to uncover all of that in the first 1 or 2 interviews. Now you can meet the candidate and have a much more substantive discussion with them about the actual role, and not, okay, where did you work here, where did you work there?
Yeah, because everyone can always read a CV, which is great, but having that candidate introduction helps a lot.
Every CV is the same. I work in the legal sector. Every single M&A partner has the same resume.
Keywords on
it's different clients. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Right.
A resume tells you nothing other than some key points you can get on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
What's the evaluation? What's the cultural fit?
Yeah.
What are some of the key challenges we need this person to do? Do they have experience successfully doing that?
Yeah.
The rest is just noise.
The one thing I need to say in to kind of like defend these corporations is they're very good with teaching their consultants how to walk through a process.
Yep.
And I feel like, I was talking with a recruiter for our place, and she's from a boutique that is very famous for their relationship building. They're all about the art of relationship building. So, you bring them out for lunch, you check in with them, you keep, like 100 relations active, which is admirable. Mm. But when you look at the recruiters coming from that firm, you see that their deals fall through not on the relationship, but on
the candidate,
on the process.
Okay.
They simply cannot follow process because they do not know about the process. So when I was in my corporate days, one of the things that got drilled down is like, okay, a candidate is going to first interview. Does he know A, B, C, and D? Did you check 1, 2, and 3? Then second interview, do you have everything ready in case he gets offered? Like, these were things, when I was in my boutique days, I didn't even think about them. But they happen. Mm-hmm. And what I must say about these corporate firms is that they prepare you really well for the contingencies that can happen in a process, which you don't really get in the shoot from the hip type of boutiques. And like for me personally, when I see growing our team here at Zach, I feel like I do want to bring that. because how nice it is sometimes to bemoan their corporate ways. I think that is something a client appreciates as well, that they have a recruitment partner that knows when to shoot, when to speak, when to be silent, and also follow a due process.
Right.
Well, I'm also a big fan of the of some of the big shops out there, because they are going to produce the talent that ultimately come here.
Yes,
and,
exactly, yeah.
and so we're very lucky in that our system really requires that you're a proven performer as a recruiter, and you can do this job 360 degrees.
Right.
So you understand process, you understand the art of negotiation, you understand when to shut up, when to speak, when to do what, how to write. You understand all that. We're not bringing rookies on, and then I think if we brought people who are too junior or rookies, they wouldn't thrive in our system. We kind of demand a certain level of exposure and stature and gravitas in order to thrive here. That being said, there's always room for improvement. We always should be looking at our processes. Are we giving clients and candidates a consistent ZAC experience?
Right.
And because ultimately that's what's going to separate us, not just the great people we have, but also the value of the service that we're providing. And if they see it, yes, we get the best evaluations, we get the best system, the best, we communicate. Our candidates are happy because our recruiters are keeping them informed of where they stand in the process. All of that kind of thing is part of a process. I think that should be standardized to some degree, while allowing, of course, for each person's individual style to shine through. I don't want to create robots unfortunately, a lot of to me, it's a little bit like, I'm not a soldier, I'm not from America, but it's a bit like the Marines and the Navy SEALs.
Right.
The Marines, it's about breaking you down. You don't have a name. It's about really removing your sense of individuality in the beginning to get you all to make sure you take direction together collectively as a group, and it works, and there's a reason for that. My understanding of special forces types teams, it's a bit different. It's really about encouraging your individual style and making sure you can do the role of everyone else and all of that kind of thing, and really it's a different level.
Well,
and they're both necessary.
Right, because my brother-in-law is he used to be ex-special forces in the U.S., but he was saying the number one protocol, regardless if you're a Marine, Special Forces, or whatever, number one principle is you want people in your team that don't get you killed.
Right.
And I think that's also something that's I found here. You're working with people, and indirectly, I don't know if you've sought this out, you're bringing people on board that are not going to kill, get the other people in the team killed.
Correct. And that means everything from reputation to deals. We can, as I like to say, any one of us should reflect the quality and the character of all of us.
Right. And
so, because the market, rightly or wrongly, will judge our firm based on who it perceives to be the lowest, denominator, the lowest bar.
There is no average of 5. It's basically like
they'll say, oh, they got that guy.
Yes.
That's what they'll accept. Yeah. And I'm proud to say they can look at our website, our page, our tribe, and say they got that guy. Oh, they got that guy. There's no one they can point to and say, okay, that's the level.
Yeah.
And so we protect that. That's our culture is our DNA, which by definition is not replicable. And you can copy our policies. You can offer the same comp plan, copy the office, all the same apps, the infrastructure. You can copy all that. But what you can't copy is our culture, and that's the most important thing we guard. That's what attracts, that's what retains people. Even if they think they're coming here because of the great comp plan we have, that might bring them through to the door. But what gets them through the gate, what gets them through the door, what keeps people here, I think we'd agree, is the culture. It's the people we interact with, we engage with.
So then regarding ZAC and where you want to take it, so right now you set up into 3 years ago the agency. You had this paradigm shift. Now 2019, fast forward maybe another 3 years, where does it go? Do you see it, do you see it expanding beyond recruitment? Do you see it going into, supporting, this accelerator programs, or just going international, or what do you envisage ZAC to be in the next 3 years?
Yeah, it's I try not to think too much about how something should turn out.
Right.
To me, I'm a big believer, as Jim Collins said, get in Good to Great, get the right people on the bus.
Right.
Get the right people on the bus, and then together, see where that bus goes. And so I like to be open to the potential without trying to fix a destination in mind. But that being said, as obviously first and foremost, it'd be great to continue to grow Zach the way we've been growing. As I mentioned earlier, our mission is to liberate recruiters, and what better way to fulfill that than to liberate more of them? But the great thing is we don't need to grow to satisfy any mandate or investors or anything like that. It's just more fun when you get to do more synergy, more split deals with each other.
Yeah.
And like I said, to get to liberate more people, see more empowered men and women actually, taking charge of their lives. So growing the firm here in Japan, and there is some now discussion about, we're in contact with several people in different markets outside of Japan, and maybe looking to replicate this over there. Probably a lot easier in some respects culturally to do that.
Yeah.
This whole gig economy in a sense. I mean, we're not really doing a gig economy per se, but, the kind of model that we're doing is certainly would certainly, I think, attract more a growing number of people in Western countries. So definitely that, and then as I think in addition to our core recruitment business, there are other businesses that have a lot of synergy and complementarity with what we're doing that would make sense, that all relate to talent and business and growth and potential. And because really that's what we're in the business of. It's about potential, it's about talent, and it's about freedom, and that comes in various forms. So we're exploring different ideas, and things that make sense, we'll explore them as a team, and we will pursue some, and they'll take off, and others won't, and we'll just adapt accordingly.
I like what we're seeing right now is that there's a critical mass building, right? I see, instead of like we need to keep rolling, or I think Jim Collins called it like pushing that wheel, right? At one point,
flywheel.
Yeah, at one point it's flying by itself, and I think we're pretty close to that point.
We've got some momentum happening now, right?
Well, Jeff Bezos is all about fueling the flywheel, right? I know you don't, as much as you don't like him.
Did you?
I know. I just
mention the B word.
I did just mention the B word because, but as much as you don't like him, the principles that he's adopted, that he's kind of purported to drive Amazon to where it is.
That's just MBA 101, man. Like he didn't invent that. It's one of those books, man.
That's a great.
As much as you don't like it.
What it's like the guy says.
All right. Anyway, that's not the forum for this.
Although on that topic, you got to watch Bill Burr, the stand-up comic, when he's talking about Steve Jobs. It's quite funny.
Okay.
A different different person here, but it's a similar kind of.
When we talk, I know that he's into turtlenecks and stuff, but I wasn't talking about. Anyway,
So going back a little bit now as well, you've told us about where you see Zach going, what Zach is, the whole nature of Zach. What about you, Robin, yourself? What's your motivation? What's your back? Because you didn't start off in recruitment.
No.
And you weren't born in Japan.
No.
So.
No, it feels like I was, but. No, so I was born in Germany actually, and my mother's English and my father's German, and so I grew up in Liverpool. My grandmother was Indian, so God, I'm all over the place. My wife's Japanese, so I'm trying to explain that lineage to my children. It takes a few minutes. But
as one does.
So I came to Japan actually in 1996 because of my love for martial arts, and I'd come here previously in '95 for about 3 weeks to train with the top teachers of the art I study. And
what is that art?
It's called Bujinkan, often referred to as ninjutsu, but the correct title is Bujinkan Budo Taijutsu. And it's an art that has a history that goes back 1,000 years. The current headmaster of the school, the grandmaster, is a guy called Hatsumi Sensei, Hatsumi Masaki, and he's the 34th grandmaster, lineage holder in this tradition. And he's currently 86, and he, believe it or not, can still kick my ass.
Wow.
He's got a power that goes beyond, obviously as an 86-year-old man, he doesn't have the physical strength per se, but there's a power that he can wield, which is difficult to explain in words, but it's quite frightening, and it's quite amazing. So I decided, after my short term here in '95, to move back here in '96, with the idea of living here for maybe 6 months. Prior to that, I was in advertising. I used to work for a big ad agency called DDB, and I was an account manager there, and so I worked there for 3 years, and then my boss said, go and enjoy your your thing in Japan for 6 months, and we welcome you. Look forward to you coming back.
You were invited back.
Yeah, so that was. I probably should let them know I'm not coming back, but that was 23 years ago now. So
You can rock up now and then.
Hey.
So I was teaching English originally because I thought I'm only going to be here for 6 months, and that quickly became a year, then 2 years, and then 3 years, and I thought, okay, well, I'm going to stay. And I thought, shall I go back into advertising? DDB had an office in Tokyo, but my Japanese was terrible at the time, and they needed someone. I spoke to them. They needed someone with fluent Japanese, so that wasn't me. And then I saw a job in the paper. I think it was the Japan Times, maybe, for a recruitment job, and at one of these big recruitment firms called East West Consulting. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so I got that job, and I joined there in 2000, and established the. I had one client at the time, GE, that was looking for a lawyer. And everyone said there's no market for placing lawyers in Japan. In fact, at the time, in 2000, only 10, was it 10? Yeah, 7, I think it was 7 Japanese bengoshi, 7 Japan bar-admitted lawyers were working in-house, so not in a law firm,
right,
in Japan.
Wow,
7. Now there's over 2,000.
How's it even
Wow.
possible?
So there wasn't much of a market for in-house recruitment at the time, so I thought, am I ever going to fill this role at GE? Cut a long story, not so long. I filled the role and then had all these other lawyers. And I thought, well, what am I going to do with them? So then started building a legal practice. So I established a legal practice at East West. This is going into 2001 now. And then by about 2003, I realized I'll always credit East West for giving me a start. And it was very much sink or swim. It was, here's a phone, here's a phone book. There's no LinkedIn yet, there's none of that. You've got to really be creative in how you get information and who's who and where, meet a lot of people and start really developing those core recruitment skills, which I think are still valuable, and unfortunately, I think many people don't know how to do today.
Yep.
And if the apocalypse hits and God forbid LinkedIn goes down, I can still pick up the phone and actually do my job.
That is one of the things I fully agree with, and I think we all share that here. That I remember. In my first year, I met 400 candidates.
Wow.
I placed exactly 3 of them. So my meeting to placement ratio was like under 1%.
Well, when my mother using child labor, made us work in her firm from the age of 14, and all I did for a number of summers is get the phone book, call the admin and say, oh, I'm calling from Fanta or from the company, I'm looking for stationery. Can I please talk to your HR manager? Or what's her name? Can I please talk to the HR? And just generate a list of candidates and names and positions and for 2 whole summers. But at the time I was like, what am I doing here? But then little did I realize later on in life moving forward, that's a valuable skill set that you gain to just not be afraid. To just approach somebody.
If you can get people to do something on the phone, you never met them, that's a very powerful feeling.
Right.
And it also is like this ultimate backdrop that whatever happens, I can meet 400 people if necessary, place 3 of them, and still make a decent living.
Yeah, and it's about, like you said, it's just having the balls to get on the phone. It was a bit of a story at East West when I spoke to Jack Welch. I got through to Jack Welch, and I spent 2-3 weeks identifying who his secretary was, and I can't remember.
Is this your goal, just to talk to Jack Welch?
Yeah, I wanted to get through to him, and there was I can't remember her name, Martha, whatever, and I built up a bit of a relationship with Martha. And finally got to the point when
over the phone affair.
She wasn't there on the particular day, and I got through to another secretary, and I said, "Oh, hi." I knew it wasn't Martha. I said, "Oh, is Martha there?" He goes, "No, this is Sarah." "Hi, Sarah. This is Robin for Jack. Is he in?"
No.
That's all I said. And she's like, "Oh, wait, 1 second, please." Jack Welch. And I was like,
You hung up?
No, I mentioned who I was, and because I was working several of the roles at GE for legal counsels at the time. And I think, if I recall, he actually said, "Oh, I've heard good things about our legal recruitment in Japan, and but I'm really not the person you need to be speaking with." But I appreciate your tenacity or something like that, or your initiative. Let me put you back to Sarah. She'll direct you to the right person. I was like, okay. Right, Mr. Welch, thank you.
Can I get your autograph? Can you fax me your autograph?
Can you fax me some shares of GE?
Yeah. 10 minutes later, a call from my president's office. Doenicke, get back in here, get in here. No. It was, so that was my little
I didn't know that.
little story. But it was about just doing the fundamentals of the job.
Right.
Getting information and understanding that you have value to offer, and regardless of who you're calling, if you have value, everyone needs to everyone moves. It doesn't matter how senior they are, and if you can present value, then that's worth them hearing about.
Right.
There's one last thing. It's kind of the elephant in the room.
A lot of things we want to ask, but we can save it for another podcast.
Yeah.
It's a little elephant.
There's this painting behind us.
Yes.
What's the story here?
Well, there's quite a few stories going on, but so I got that in Peru. I went to Peru in the Amazon, actually. I spent 2-3 weeks in the Amazon twice now. Going back, I think the first time 3 years ago, and then 2 years ago. And look, I had never been to South America actually in my life, and then my first trip there is to spend 3 weeks in the jungle, living in basically a tree hut with no hot water, no running water, no electricity, and very, very bare bones, very, very primitive. But I was there actually to spend time with a shamanic tribe, if you will, and kind of participating in some of their rituals and enjoying some of their plant medicines and things like that. And it was an incredible experience and very eye-opening, very revealing experience for me. I actually grew a lot from it in many ways. Probably a topic for another podcast to go into detail. I could go on forever, but it was probably one of the most transformative experiences of my life, and it's had a knock-on effect into every other aspect of my life, whether it be relationships, business, creating ideas for how I run the business, all of that kind of thing. It's all connected.
There's a myth or a rumor, I don't know how you want to call it, that going around that you came up with the principle of the agency, the foundation of the agency, while you were basically with the in the jungle.
I think the idea, the impetus for the agency came pre-jungle days, shortly prior to going there. But a lot of clarity and some change in direction, some little things. When I came back from the jungle, there was more insight I had about more clarity, I would say, about what we should be doing, where we should be going, and. A lot of that came down to a deeper discovery about my own self, and who I am, and all of that, and how that relates to everyone else. I know it sounds a bit metaphysical, and
no. Well, I think that's one of the great things that you see when you look at companies, how they're built. There's a structure, and there's strength in the people, but there is no. There's nothing more than that. There is no. It's a functional thing, and it doesn't go beyond that. And I think with stories like these and going a little bit beyond the revenue making part, you create something beautiful.
Well, the thing for me is, my core. If I understand myself and come to realize that this being Robin has many roles. I'm a company owner. I'm a colleague. I'm a senior person. I'm a father. I'm a brother. I'm a son. I'm a husband. I'm a martial arts teacher. I'm a martial arts student. So I play many roles, and we have 24 hours a day, and so many days a week, and so many days a year. And for me, life is about living completely, and that means paying attention, the necessary attention to all the roles that you play in life, and not some arbitrary kind of division between life and everything that we don't consider life. We usually call that work, and it's work and not work. To me, that's a division that's very dualistic and very artificial, and I think it's all life. And you spend a great deal of that as in your work responsibilities, and you should be spending equal time with other responsibilities, that, in some respects, more important responsibilities. And for me, it's about integrating all the roles I play and paying due attention to the roles I play, but understanding that's easier to do if you have a strong core idea of your purpose and who you are, and then that permeates into every role that you play. And I think that's been quite an interesting discovery for me over the last 10 or so years. And the martial arts plays a big part in that as well. I'm a martial artist. I've been a martial artist. I'm 47 now, so since I was 6, so 41 years I've been doing martial arts, and various martial arts. The Bujinkan, the ninjutsu, has been my longest one. I've been doing that for 25, 26 years. But I also study some Chinese martial arts and Brazilian jiu-jitsu and things like that. many, there's so many books, and we have probably a whole bunch on our shelf here, but talk about, relating martial arts principles and techniques to life, right? Like Sun Tzu's Art of War for the boardroom or for the sales executive.
Yeah.
All of that kind of thing. And a lot of that is, some of it's good, some of it's a bit,
Stretchy.
they're just trying to make some, weird connection. But for me, it's a lot of the real core principles of martial arts about non-attachment, about going with the flow, about not having a preconceived idea of how the technique is going to work or what technique you're going to use, being open, being zero, a mushin kind of no-mind state. All of that is for me, so important in business, in life, that I find tremendous value from my training in the martial arts, and how that is kind of applied naturally. Not as a technique, but just naturally, like I said earlier, permeates into everything else I do, business being a big part of it.
Well, I think that's
a great.
that's a wrap.
That's a great
for-
straight statement to end it up with.
for this podcast. But I think we definitely have to do a second one because there's a whole plethora
We'll
of
spend an hour on that next time.
Yeah, I
An hour on
think
that. We
do
can
that.
do an hour on Bujinkan and how you got into that.
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah.
And an hour on whatever else. I think we could do a whole series just with Robin.
We'll see. I think we'll see Robin a little bit more often.
If you'll have me back.
All right. So Robin, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
We tried to coordinate time to make sure we had you as a guest. So
Really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Robin.
Thank you.
Great. I'm gonna wrap it up.